Microdosing is when you derive the maximum benefit from taking the minimum effective dose. This is how you minimize unwanted effects. People microdose daily to feel and perform better. Some people use it to enhance their creativity, to sleep better, to help with pain, to have more focus in the moment, to recover from workouts quicker, and to manage anxiety. Today's podcast is sponsored by Microdose Gummies and Lumi Labs. Microdose Gummies deliver perfect entry-level doses of THC that help you feel just the right amount of good. I love this company, and I'm a big fan of their products. I enjoy taking Microdose Gummies on the weekends because I get really fantastic sleep. There's nothing like it. The gummies are organic, infused with real fruit, vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and they are enjoyable. Microdose is available nationwide. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com and use the code BEYOND to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. Links can be found in the show description, but again, that's microdose.com and code BEYOND.
This podcast contains adult themes and graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
A commercial-free version of this podcast is available on Patreon for $1 per month. Patreon.com/Beyond Contempt Podcast. I'm Renee, and this is Beyond Contempt True Crime. You're listening to episode 66, Mwivano Kupaza. Spring Green is a small town that rests about an hour west of Madison, Wisconsin. Less than 2,000 people live there, and the most notable fact about Spring Green is Frank Lloyd Wright built his summer home in the city. The Wisconsin River runs along the southern border of this small town. Beautiful summers are a given, and water sports are some of the most popular attractions in the area. July 30th, 1999, was a smoldering hot summer day in Spring Green, with temperatures in the 90s. A couple was having a picnic and taking in some of the most scenic views that the Wisconsin River offered. As the pair enjoyed their lunch, they spotted a black duffel bag. They investigated, and much to their horror, they found human remains. The police were immediately called. When police examined the remains, they discovered one body part, a torso. Authorities immediately organized a search, and over the next few days, they discovered various body parts inside of multiple bags, including Woodman's grocery bags by the side of the river. Woodman's is a popular grocery store in Wisconsin and Illinois. The victim's torso, head, arms, and legs were recovered. However, they did not find the feet. Other than the recovered body parts and bags, there was no other evidence found by the river. The police delivered the remains to the medical examiner for the autopsy. A cause of death could not be determined, and they could not identify the victim because the victim's skin had been completely removed from the skull. They estimated the victim had been in the water for around 3 days. The characteristics that the investigators could identify were: the victim was a female in the age range of 16 to 25 years old. She was 5'2" to 5'4" and weighed approximately 150 pounds. She had near-perfect teeth with no fillings. Since investigators recovered her hands, they ran her fingerprints through a national database, but found no matches, so it was likely that the victim had never been arrested. Next, police checked their database for similar crimes where the perpetrator dismembered their victim, and there were no cases in the area, but there was one similar crime that took place in New Hampshire. They had arrested a suspect in New Hampshire, and after thorough questioning, they determined the suspect was not in Wisconsin to commit this crime. Investigators were beside themselves with how to proceed, because if they could not identify the victim, there was no chance that they would catch her killer. The best course of action was to bring in a world-renowned forensic anthropologist to determine the identity of the victim. A talented forensic anthropologist, along with the help from engineers, analyzed the victim with software capable of taking skull measurements. As a result, a real-life model was constructed, and they printed pictures of the victim onto posters, which were sent all over Wisconsin and nearby states. They referred to the victim as the Wisconsin River Jane Doe. Investigators hoped the victim was from either Spring Green or nearby Madison. 6 months after smattering posters of the Wisconsin River Jane Doe everywhere, authorities had their first lead. Sherry Goss had seen the poster when she was shopping in Westby, Wisconsin, and immediately recognized the victim. It was 25-year-old Mwivano Kupaza. The person on the poster was her ex-husband's cousin, who was from Tanzania and moved to Wisconsin in January 1997. Sherry worked as a missionary and went to Tanzania with her church group. She met a man named Peter Kupaza, who was her language tutor. Peter courted Sherry and asked her to marry him. The pair moved back to the United States, settled in Madison in 1993, and tied the knot shortly thereafter. Peter wanted to bring his first cousin, Mwivano, over as well. They had a close relationship and grew up together in Tanzania. She came to the United States on a student visa, attended the Wisconsin ESL Institute, and moved in with Peter and Sherry Kupaza in the Madison area in January 1997. After the arrival of Mwivano, Peter and Sherry's marriage quickly became rocky. Sherry noticed that Peter's behavior changed. He often tried to isolate Mwivano and was controlling. Sherry uncovered Peter was sexually assaulting Mwivano, and this resulted in a pregnancy. Peter ordered Mwivano to have an abortion. Sherry split with Peter in summer 1997. Investigators needed concrete evidence to forensically confirm Mwivano's identity, so they could start building a murder case against Peter Kupaza. Investigators paid a visit to the abortion clinic and compared fingerprints from the paperwork that Mwivano had signed to fingerprints from her body. It was a perfect match. After Sherry moved out, Peter and Mwivano were living together in Madison, Wisconsin. On April 1st, 1999, Peter moved into an apartment on Pleasant View Road in a western suburb of Madison, Wisconsin called Middleton. Mwivano turned up dead a few months later at the end of July. On January 31st, 2000, the police went to Middleton to interview Peter Kupaza at his apartment. When they asked about the last time he had seen his cousin, Kupaza said she left town on April 25th, 1999. Peter spoke with Mwivano's father, and she was indeed back home in Tanzania. Police followed up with Mwivano's father. He told investigators that he had not heard from his daughter for over a year. The last time they spoke was in June 1998. He and his wife did not report her missing because Peter Kupaza promised them that their daughter was doing great. Investigators confronted Kupaza, and he did not back down with his story. He told authorities that Mwivano had been living with some Korean friends in Madison. Kupaza gave her $1,500, which enabled her to travel. She went to the Memorial Union, which is a historic destination on the University of Wisconsin-Madison's campus. Besides all the social activities that are held at the Union, it was a departure hub for a variety of buses that traveled to many Midwest cities. Kupaza claimed Mwivano boarded a Greyhound for Iowa on April 25, 1999. She met up with a friend named Shadrach, who was a teacher they both had known, and the pair flew to Tanzania. Kupaza did not have the contact information for Shadrach. Investigators dug into Kupaza's financial situation, and it was dire. The man had little money and was behind on some of his bills. Authorities doubted Kupaza had 2 dimes to rub together, let alone $1,500 to give away. Kupaza claimed he slowly saved the money and held it outside of the banking system in cash. When police showed Kupaza the poster of Mwivano that the forensic anthropologist had created, he said that he did not recognize the person in the picture. He felt like it looked nothing like his cousin. Yet when police had shown the poster of Mwivano to her friends and acquaintances, they firmly believed the poster looked exactly like her. Kupaza said that Mwivano had never been inside his Middleton apartment, but when pressed, he admitted that she had been there several times. Police thoroughly searched his apartment and found several concerning items. Down by the baseboard near the bathtub, there was a smear of blood about a 1/4 inch long. A later DNA analysis determined that the blood was Mwivano's. Police took an envelope with a June 24, 1999 postmark from the Madison Area Technical College Job Placement Office that was addressed to Peter Kupaza. When examined for fingerprints, Mwivano's were found on that envelope. Kupaza clearly had contact with his cousin after April 25th. Police found several sharp knives, purses, bags, a watch, jewelry, a hymnal, and a Bible. They later confirmed that some of these items belonged to Mwivano, per Sherry Goss. Mwivano would never leave the country without her hymnal or Bible, which were possessions very important to her. Peter Kupaza religiously shopped at Woodman's, and police found many Woodman's empty plastic bags in his apartment, the same kind which were found at the crime scene. Investigators collected Kupaza's daily planner that had mostly English entries, minus a few that were written in a Tanzania language. On July 26 and July 30th, 1999, he had made entries that referred to falling down into or onto something, a chosen or special day, and getting a job done. While this was circumstantial, Kupaza made the entries at the time of his cousin's murder. The knives taken from Kupaza's apartment were later confirmed to not have been used in the crime. They charged Peter Kupaza with first-degree intentional homicide and dismemberment of Mwivano Kupaza, and he was facing life in prison. In February 2000, a judge set Kupaza's bail at $500,000. Peter Kupaza had gone to such great lengths to obscure the identity of his victim that the judge felt he needed to set the bail high enough to ensure that Kupaza returned for his trial. Considering Kupaza's poor financial situation, he was unable to post bond and was indigent. He had been evicted from the last 2 apartments he rented. The last job he had was a temporary assignment processing unemployment insurance claims, which lasted from December 8th to January 28th. His last supervisor said he was a friendly and pleasant person and couldn't imagine that he committed such a horrible crime. Peter Kupaza's trial began on June 12, 2000, and was held in Sauk County, just northwest of Madison. The defense team argued that the court case had gained so much notoriety that they wanted jurors to be brought in from another county. The judge agreed and brought in potential jurors from Portage County, which was several counties away in central Wisconsin. The prosecution put on a first-rate case filled with logical motives and interconnected circumstantial evidence that the defense team had difficulties poking holes in. The state contended that Kupaza wasn't doing well economically, and he could no longer manage being financially responsible for his cousin Mwivano. He disfigured and disarticulated her remains, including removing the skin from her skull. Kupaza went to great lengths so Mwivano couldn't be connected back to him. The mutilation was so significant that the cause of death was never determined, which concerned the prosecution, as this made the case more difficult to prove. Their theory was that he dismembered his cousin in the bathtub of his apartment, where her blood was found on the wall. The defense claimed that the bloodstain found in his bathroom was Mwivano's menstrual blood, or blood from shaving her legs. There was no direct evidence that Kupaza was a skilled butcher, capable of dismembering a body. But the prosecution had generic statements from Kupaza's uncles and ex-wife that it is common in Tanzania for families to butcher animals. Kupaza was familiar with the Wisconsin River, where the victims' remains were found. One of Kupaza's co-workers confirmed she had a specific discussion with him about the Wisconsin River. He was very well acquainted with the river's beauty, as well as the dangers of the river and the current patterns. I struggle with getting up every single day, as I'm not a morning person, and I have to rely on my pushy herding dog to get me out of bed. And I'm usually stuck in first gear when I start work. But there's a drink that helps you get performing, and it's called Magic Mind. Magic Mind is a green shot that helps you get moving and focused. Some people take Magic Mind so they drink less coffee. Not me, no way. I like it right alongside my coffee. I work hard at my day job, and I create content for this podcast in the evenings. It takes a lot of energy and drive to get everything done on time. I found that Magic Mind is easy to use, it tastes great, and it helps give me that push I need. There are a lot of quality ingredients in this little drink, including lion's mane and cordyceps mushrooms, which help with clarity and focus. Try it out and give it a shot, especially if you're having trouble getting it together in the morning. Check them out at magicmind.co/contempt. You can also use my discount code CONTEMPT to get 40% off your first subscription or 20% off your first one-time purchase. My 40% off code only lasts for 10 days, so jump on it. That's magicmind.co/contempt. Discount code CONTEMPT. Peter Kupaza's ex-wife, Sherry Goss, testified Peter was sexually assaulting his cousin Mwivano after she moved in with them, and this ultimately caused their divorce. She confirmed she had given the black duffel bag to Kupaza as a gift several years ago, and that was the same black duffel bag the victim's body parts were found in on the Wisconsin River. Sherry confirmed Kupaza arrived in the United States with no money and rarely worked prior to his cousin's arrival in 1997. Mwivano also came to the United States with nothing and financially depended on Peter Kupaza, which made her a target for abuse. After 1997, Kupaza mostly held part-time or temporary jobs. After Sherry and Kupaza divorced, he missed payments on his car lease because he lacked a stable job. Part of his divorce decree included making those car payments, and when he couldn't, he was forced to go to court and disclose all his financial assets on May 20th, 1998. On this financial disclosure form, he included no savings held as cash. He also listed Mwivano as a dependent. The prosecution failed to understand how Kupaza came up with $1,500 to fund his cousin's trip to Tanzania when he could not even afford his court-mandated car payments, nor disclose this money. In September 1999, Kupaza even told one of his friends about his financial struggles. Finding a full-time job was impossible, and he couldn't pay for his cousin and himself. Kupaza thought it would be financially easier if he were on his own. The prosecution believed that this showed a powerful motive to kill his cousin because she had become a financial burden, and because of her culture, she could not return home to Tanzania and be accepted after her rape and abortion. Peter Kupaza testified at his own trial. He stuck to his story about last seeing Mwivano in April 1999 before she went to Tanzania via Iowa. Kupaza originally claimed that Mwivano's father said she arrived in Tanzania, but he only said this because he thought police were from Immigration and Naturalization Services. But he portrayed this as a noble lie, so police would stop looking for Mwivano because of her expired visa. Kupaza said he really thought she had returned to Tanzania, even if he didn't have confirmation that she left the city limits of Madison, Wisconsin. Kupaza said Mwivano began packing up her things on April 24, 1999, and asked if she could use his black duffel bag. He had been using the black duffel bag, and it was full of his stuff. Kupaza did not have time to empty the duffel and said he had to get back to work. He promised his cousin that he would empty it later and would pack her things up. Then he assured Mwivano he would drop it off at the Memorial Union the next day, where the bus was set to leave for Iowa. Kupaza claimed he saw Mwivano off on April 25th, when he gave her the duffel bag with her stuff and handed her $1,500 in cash for a flight back to Tanzania. He never actually saw his cousin board the Greyhound bus, and she was supposed to meet up with a man named Shadrach before they flew to Tanzania. Because he handed off his black duffel bag at the bus station, and Mwivano later turned up dead inside the bag, this severed his connection he had to the item after his cousin left town. The prosecution obviously did not settle for this explanation of the black duffel bag, and reminded the jury that at the crime scene, besides the black duffel bag, Mwivano's body parts were also found inside Woodman's grocery bags, the same bags that Kupaza kept a collection of at his apartment. Kupaza was steadfast about last seeing his cousin on April 25, 1999, at the Memorial Union, but there was another important piece of evidence found in his apartment, which tore this assertion to the ground. He received a piece of mail addressed to him, which was postmarked June 24, 1999. Mwivano's fingerprint was found on the envelope. The crime lab confirmed this was Mwivano's fingerprint, which meant that they caught Kupaza in another lie about his last date of contact with his cousin. The defense attorney attempted to invalidate the fingerprint technician's credibility. In the crime lab report, there were 2 documents used in the fingerprint analysis that confirmed the identity of Mwivano's body. The tech made a minor error when he stated that both documents came from the same health clinic. This was an oversight, as the documents came from 2 different clinics. The defense attorney concluded that if the fingerprint technician made this type of mistake, then perhaps they made an error identifying the fingerprint on the envelope in Kupaza's apartment. But the error the fingerprint technician made in the report was clerical and was corrected the same day he issued the report. The prosecution said that the defense's assertion was unreasonable, as the small clerical error that was immediately corrected doesn't render the technician incapable of analyzing the fingerprint on the envelope. The defense had no rebuttals and did not have their own expert to analyze the fingerprint or challenge the fingerprint analysis in any proper way. So the defense tried to attack the fingerprint from another angle. The defense attorney said that Kupaza and Mwivano had purchased a P.O. box in downtown Madison in June 1997, and implied that Mwivano placed her print on the envelope without Kupaza having physically seen her. However, the defense could not prove that Kupaza received mail at the P.O. box after April 1999. There was a postal worker who confirmed that he witnessed Mwivano pick up mail at the P.O. box one time prior to January 1999. It was a memorable event because she did not have a key and used her identification. The defense claimed that Mwivano might have gone to the P.O. box, examined the mail, touched the envelope that was addressed to Peter Kupaza, and placed it back in the box because it wasn't for her. This far-fetched scenario raised an important question, which benefited the prosecution. If Mwivano and Peter had such a close relationship, and he had not seen her since April 25, 1999, why would she come back to the downtown post office in Madison, Wisconsin, check the mail and touch his envelope, return it to the P.O. box, and not tell her cousin, Peter Kupaza, that she was back in town from Tanzania? Kupaza was caught in an outright lie. Another woman named Faith testified for the prosecution. Faith was a friend of Peter Kupaza. She was from Tanzania, but immigrated to the United States in 1998. After Mwivano's body was found by the Wisconsin River in July 1999, but before she was identified, Kupaza called Faith and told her Mwivano permanently moved back to Tanzania. Kupaza said that Mwivano enrolled in nursing school, and he learned this information from people back in Tanzania. But of course, this conversation ran counter to his reason for lying to the police, believing that they were from immigration. His noble lie was telling police that Mwivano went back to Tanzania, despite not being certain that she left Madison, Wisconsin, but telling his friend that his cousin definitely enrolled in a Tanzanian nursing school program. This was another feather in the prosecution's cap, and they proved that Peter Kupaza was caught in a web of his own lies, none of which were noble. After 9 hours, a jury convicted Peter Kupaza of first-degree intentional homicide and hiding a corpse with intent to conceal a crime. They sentenced him to life in prison for the murder conviction and another 5 years for hiding a corpse. Kupaza would not be eligible for parole for at least 31 years. He maintained his innocence and begged his parents to believe him. "Whoever did this to my sister does not know what we are going through right now. It is hard to think about what has happened to my sister, but I would like for my parents to know I didn't do this horrible act to my sister." Peter Kupaza appealed his case on May 25, 2006. The main reason for the appeal was a serious issue surfaced with the blood-sniffing cadaver dog and the dog trainer that was used to identify blood in Peter Kupaza's apartment. In the original trial, dog trainer Sarah Anderson claimed her canine had the specialized ability to identify blood when other methods could not. She even did a demonstration for the jury and showed that her dog could detect human blood versus animal blood. The defense attorney attacked her demonstration, qualifications, and credibility in the original trial, so the jury received a balanced opinion of her testimony. In Kupaza's apartment, the dog signaled that there was blood in the bathtub, on other surfaces in the bathroom, on kitchen knives, on a cutting board, on a mop, and on several doorknobs. When the crime lab analyzed all the objects and surfaces, they found nothing other than the blood that was found close to the baseboard of the bathtub, which was confirmed to be Mwivano's. After the trial, they charged the dog trainer with evidence tampering in several cases. Authorities accused her of planting false evidence at crime scenes. Then she would have her dog discover the planted items. They convicted her on multiple federal charges. The dog trainer's testimony was a tiny part of the original trial, but she and her dog identified the location where Mwivano's dismemberment took place. Kupaza claimed his counsel was ineffective because they did not counter the dog trainer's testimony with an expert witness who would have easily discredited her claims. When the court evaluated the evidence for the appeal, they believed that the dog trainer's testimony was reasonably harmless in the face of all the other strong circumstantial evidence that was uncovered in the original trial. They denied the appeal. Peter Kupaza is currently incarcerated at the New Lisbon Correctional Institution in Baraboo, Wisconsin. Mwivano Kupaza's parents traveled from Tanzania to Wisconsin to be at Peter Kupaza's criminal trial. This was very challenging for the family, since Mwivano's parents had taken care of Peter since he was a young boy, after his father died. Mwivano and Peter had been raised like siblings. Mwivano made the large move from Tanzania to the United States to advance her education, gain independence, and make a better life for herself. Mwivano Kupaza was buried in Westby, Wisconsin. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Beyond Contempt. Please visit beyondcontemptpodcast.com for the links to the sources and music used in this episode. Research, writing, editing, audio production, and sound design were performed by me, Renee. If you like the show, please leave me a positive review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you so much, everyone.